Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you very much for having me on.
The Western premiers are supposed to be meeting up, and I'm sure talking about the flow of goods between the provincial boundaries and the territories, but when it comes to moving oil and gas around, they don't seem to agree. What's this going to do to taxpayers when BC and Alberta just can't get along about the pipeline?
This is extremely distressing for taxpayers, and that goes for our supporters both in Alberta and in British Columbia. It is the number one issue that people raise with us, with our various directors across Canada, when it comes to oil and gas and the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And so, as we know, we've got a very public feud going on now between the NDP Premier of Alberta and the NDP Premier of British Columbia. What I find almost laughable, if billions of dollars weren't on the table, it's almost laughable that here we had a federally approved and then a provincially approved pipeline going from Edmonton out through to the Burnaby port. And so there was approved, and then BC said, no, we want to block your oil and gas. We don't like it. Alberta then threatened to stop sending us oil and gas, and now BC is going to court to try to sue Alberta for trying to stop the oil and gas. It's just such a weird, head-scratching situation. I don't quite know why the Premier of British Columbia is taking this kind of action. I don't think he realizes what kind of a massive economic impact this is going to have, not just with this one pipeline, but what kind of a message it sends to the international business world when a major country like Canada can have regulatory approval, federal approval, and in this case, previously, 2 provincial jurisdictional approvals, pour in all your money, go through all these hoops, imagine being a business investor, and then to be thwarted. A lot of people are saying that this is going to put a major chill on investment in Canada, and so we're worried about it all round.
Well, we're hearing that Ottawa will back up anybody who decides to build the pipeline, but do you think the federal government should be doing something more, like passing a bill that says the pipeline must be built as approved and anybody who stands in the way is breaking the law?
You know, the federal government could do that very easily. That is very simply and very easily within Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's power. He's got a majority government. He says repeatedly, out loud, that he supports this pipeline and approves this pipeline and it will be built. Apparently, I was speaking to experts, they don't even need to necessarily pass legislation. Apparently something as simple as an order in council, it's called something different, but it's as simple a mechanism as an order in council, could be passed to say, this has been approved, build it. What we're really worried about is this idea of backstopping this project with taxpayer dollars. That would be the worst possible situation, because then you'd be sending a very terrible message. You'd be saying, oh, well, a private company, in this case Kinder Morgan, can pour so much of their money into this. They can go through all the regulatory hoops. They can go through all the years and years of consultation and examination, et cetera, et cetera. It's all their money, right? And then at the end of the day, if an activist government decides to encourage a blockade of that pipeline, we'll pour taxpayer dollars down the drain onto that fight? That's a really bad message to send, because where does it end? If this happens with Kinder Morgan this one time, then what happens if it's another company after that, and then after that? How many dollars are taxpayers expected to cough up here? Back when this was private money, corporate money, being invested in order to turn, major profits and have great salaries for so many people for something that is the lifeblood of our economy, natural resources, things like oil and gas. We can't function without them. The idea of functioning without them is like functioning without electricity. It's just a non-starter. But the idea of actually pouring taxpayer dollars onto that fight directly, like, it's a very, very bad idea. And so we've spoken out very clearly. My federal counterpart, Aaron Woodrick, who's based out of Ottawa, has spoken out against this very clearly. We need to make sure that the business community and companies like these know that when they go through all the proper regulatory steps and they're approved by various levels of government, that they'll be allowed to do what they're told they're allowed to do, not just throw taxpayers' money onto it.
Well, some people might take the position that if the pipeline costs $7.8 billion but is expected to make $40 billion, it would be a good investment for taxpayers.
But then we don't know if it's actually going to happen. What happens if they start fighting it and they start investing in it and then the federal government continues to drag its feet, or something else happens at the provincial level and then years from now we still don't have a pipeline? You know, that's a bad, bad message to send. It's a bad precedent to set. And so that's why we're always leery against these sort of things. You know, we call it corporate welfare in our world. We don't support taxpayer dollars going towards mega corporations that turn billions of dollars in profit. We don't care if it's Toyota or Bombardier, what have you. If the company's doing real well, they don't need taxpayer dollars being given to them. And we were always opposed to it, and so we're consistent with that. It doesn't matter if it's an oil and gas company or a car company. Taxpayers shouldn't be directly funding them.
What about the millions of dollars taxpayers in Alberta and BC are spending on lawyers over this deal?
Right? I know. It's brutally depressing.
Do we know how much it's costing us?
That's a great question. I don't know. Basically, time is money when it comes to court, and this has been dragging on for a long time, and we don't see an end in sight. And so, to be honest, we're just wincing and bracing ourselves to see how much this actual court bill, several court bills will be, because keep in mind that it isn't just the main Trans Mountain fight. It's the BC government then fighting back against Alberta, trying to threaten to sue them if they dare turn off the taps of the oil and gas that they apparently dislike so much. It's just mind-boggling when you really think about it. And so actually we're ponying up with our own supporters, and we're throwing in on behalf of taxpayers in favor of this pipeline. And so we're actually seeking intervener status when it comes to the Kinder Morgan and the Trans Mountain pipeline. They're one and the same because it is so essential to our economy. Frankly, if people don't have these really good jobs and stable jobs, and we don't have a really vibrant and healthy and bustling economy like we have with natural resources and oil and gas, then we won't have enough money, frankly, to pay the sky-high taxes that are forced from us by various levels of government. And so that's why we felt it was very important, on behalf of our supporters, who call us about this every day, to seek intervener status. And that means that we would be granted time within these court cases to speak on behalf of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and explain what this project is doing to them and what it means to them.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after the break.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, what do you think the premiers of the Western provinces and the Northern Territory should be talking at their annual meeting? What do you think they should be huddled up about?
Ideally, I wish all of them were in the same room and they were hammering out this problem that we're facing with Kinder Morgan and this Trans Mountain pipeline. There isn't a more important issue right now that's facing us. It's staring us in the face. We have a real deadline at the end of this month. This is vitally important. And actually, as the NDP Premier of Alberta, Rachel Notley, said, we can't be sitting around discussing, nice-to-have ideas like a pharmacare program if you're choking off the lifeblood of the economy, that is, oil and gas. And so she actually was making the point of somebody has to pay for this. Money just doesn't spout from somewhere. It actually comes from resources. It comes from hard assets. It comes from jobs. It comes from people working and getting their salaries and paying income tax. It comes from companies paying property taxes. And so she was trying to make the point, I think, that you can't have the things like healthcare and education if you don't have a strong economy and a tax base to take the money from. It's kind of a no-brainer. And so I wish that all of them, frankly, were huddled together and hammering this out and somehow convincing the BC Premier, Mr. Horgan, of the reason behind this and convincing him to get this going and let it go ahead.
What about Rachel Notley not going to the meeting?
I think it sent a signal. I think it sent a signal that she isn't going to stand around and pose for pictures and do a photo op and do, as we call them in journalism, grip and grins. That's where you're all standing, in front of some banner with the location where you're meeting that year with the number splashed across it, and you all make some sort of canned announcement about what you want the feds to do. Usually, with these premiers gatherings, it usually winds up with a gripe fest about what they want to get from the feds. It doesn't matter if it's the Liberals or the Conservatives in power in Ottawa. Usually the Western premiers get together and they present a list of grievances that they want Ottawa to somehow fix or solve or to back off on. In this case, it's one of the first times I can remember where a Western premier is ticked off so much at a fellow Western premier that he or she stays home. And so, optically, it was probably the smart move to make.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Kris Sims. Kris, Kinder Morgan, ironically, is one of the biggest taxpayers in Burnaby, a city that does not want them to build their pipeline. Do you find that ironic?
Isn't that interesting? And I think, something as supposedly boring, quote unquote, as a property tax can sometimes get missed. But you're right. If you actually take a look at how big they are and the kinds of services that they provide and the materials that they handle and store, yeah, they are one of the biggest property taxpayers in Burnaby, and I believe a very large one for the city of Coquitlam. And so, for example, apparently when they wanted to expand one of their portions of their operation, their physical operations there on the ground, that one expansion would have raised enough property taxes to pay for garbage collection for a year in the city of Coquitlam. It was something around that. And so, yeah, when you start adding up all those loonies and toonies, that's a lot of money that goes into these city coffers through property taxes from this corporation. So yeah, you can, any way you slice it, if it comes down to somebody who's actually digging in the ground as a laborer in order to bring the pipe in there, the trucker who's moving the pipes in, the fabricators who are building and welding the pipes together, the professional engineers who are fitting the pipes together, those who are actually directing the oil and gas into the pipe, you name it. There are so many layers of work involved here. And the vast majority of it is very high-paying work. Some of those skilled labor jobs are really good-paying jobs for families, and in some cases, they support entire families. We've heard from so many people throughout the generations who have one or two people who are flying into, back then they used to call it the patch, flying into the oil patch to work. My family was one of those families. Now it's the oil sands. You're heading up to Fort Mac. And it isn't just in British Columbia where we have workers flying up into Fort Mac and working in this, secondary companies that supply the oil sands with their work, with their trucks, with their maintenance, with their housing. a huge number of working young people in Atlantic Canada fly out all the time. They practically live on WestJet, fly out to the oil sands, up to Fort Mac in order to actually live. That's the only reason, frankly, why some of these working class families are able to even have homes and able to have their trucks and able to put their kids into hockey and dance practice. It is a vital element of work for a very specific layer of people. And I think that layer of people is unfortunately getting completely ignored by Ottawa. Ottawa says that this pipeline is going to be built. Well, they have the power to actually put their foot down and make it happen. And so we hope that there's a good outcome to this.
On another topic, Seattle has placed a head tax on businesses to help fund programs for the homeless. Do you have any fears that the same thing is going to happen in Vancouver or in BC?
That's a great question. And so there's always a balance of being able to provide for those a social safety net who can't help themselves, those who are struggling with poverty, with lack of housing, with addiction, and Canadians are very compassionate. And I think that for a lot of people, there needs to be a balance on how to properly provide those services. So it's a good question of, do we start introducing taxes like this on what? Your major employers in the cities? I don't know if that's the best route forward, because then you're sending a signal somehow that these big corporations are hurting or dampening the cities that they're based out of, and somehow they need to pay a penalty fee or, as you say, a head tax in order to help provide for these services. These companies already, as we just pointed out with the property taxes in Burnaby, these corporations already pay a lot of taxes in property and employment taxes and health taxes for their employees, you name it. And a lot of times, not all of them, but a lot of times these major corporations will have massive charitable giving programs as well. And so generally speaking, a lot of times these corporations already pay a large amount of money towards social services. Our concern usually with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, speaking for them, is how these monies are spent. We're always concerned about ever-growing government and ever-growing bureaucracy and not actually seeing how the money trickles forward to the front lines and actually helps real people, rather than simply hiring more and more middle management, communications staffers, paying for big fancy buildings, you name it. And as we've seen with other forms of different bureaucracy that is supposed to be a service provider, like TransLink, we'll see in some cases wages going through the roof for people who work on their boards and panels, rather than going towards air conditioning for buses or more buses on busier routes. And so our question and our concern always there is, what message are you sending? And in this case, are you telling places like Starbucks and Amazon, if you're speaking from Seattle, that we don't like that you're here, and we're going to tax you for existing here? Thank you very much. And two, how is that money being spent? Where's the guarantee that that money is going towards the people who actually need it?
Do you think there should be more deliberate pricing of taxes and services? If you pay a gasoline tax, it should go to improving transit and highways, not into general revenue.
Yes, and so back when the gas taxes were first foisted upon us, we were told, just like the income tax is supposed to be temporary, we were told that all of this money is going towards roads and bridges and infrastructure. Well, that's not exactly true. There have been many studies done that show that a big chunk of that money goes towards general revenue. And unfortunately, it's not a surprise. And the problem there, though, is that it makes governments addicted to taxes. Because government, by its nature, wants to control and wants to govern and wants to grow, it needs more money to sustain and replicate itself. And the only place it gets money is from taxpayers. It does not generate its own wealth. And so when you have really high gas taxes, like we just announced on our Gas Tax Honesty Day, when you have really high gas taxes, it's very tempting for government to treat them like an ATM. And governments are treating gas pumps like ATMs. And so a lot of that money goes towards general revenue. And it's the same thing with every other thing that you name with a tax in front of it. The carbon tax, the school tax, whatever label you stick ahead of it, in order to make it more palatable and to slip it past taxpayers. The honesty comes in with how it's actually being spent. And that's what causes people to lose hope, to get distrustful of government, and to get cynical. And so that's why, we think if you're going to collect a gas tax, every nickel of that should be going towards roads, bridges, and infrastructure. It shouldn't be going to general revenue.
Kris, anything else you want to bring up today?
I did want to point out that if people do stand up and they do make their voices heard, that it really does matter. You know, as we mentioned with Metro Vancouver, that it went and voted themselves a retroactive pay increase and a big retirement bonus for sitting politicians who are already being paid salaries for being mayors and councillors of their respective cities and towns. For politicians sitting on a secondary panel who went and voted themselves this fat pay hike and a retirement bonus, when people got so upset that they called, they emailed, they wrote letters, they called into talk radio, they backed down completely. They reversed themselves completely. And so I just wanted to encourage everybody that it doesn't matter if it's the school tax that's actually just a property surtax on every home that's worth more than $3 million in Vancouver, if it's the carbon tax, if it's gas taxes, you name it. If it's something that you find is really expensive for you and you don't think it's fair, I just encourage you, no matter what party you vote for, stand up and be heard. No matter what level of government it is, call your local government, call your mayor, call your city councillor, call your MLA, call your member of parliament. Even go to your school board and write your own letters there. The point is that we do live in a democracy, and people need to listen to you. And if you get your friends and neighbors together and respectfully and firmly speak up, you will be heard. And frankly, that's how these politicians earn their living. That's how they make money, is by being voted back in. Some of them want to do what's right for their constituents. Others sometimes need a reminder, and that reminder is a voter telling them, I'm going to hold you accountable for your decisions. And so I just want to encourage people, no matter what their issue is, to stand up and be heard.
Kris, is there a website people can go to find out more about the Taxpayers Federation?
Yes, and actually we also provide tips on, because some people don't know how, and how to best go about it. We also provide tips on how to write a letter to your member of parliament, to your MLA, to your mayor. And you can go to our website, taxpayer.com. We've been around for more than 27 years, and there's a full page there with names and addresses and maybe even some telephone numbers, and basically a template of how to write a letter that will get attention and actually have your voice be heard. And so if you go to taxpayer.com, you can keep up with all of our latest news. You can sign our petitions about what's important to you, and you can figure out how to get your voice heard.
Kris, thank you very much.
Thank you for including me. Really appreciate it.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. As she just said, her website, taxpayer.com. If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.